station, so they were worried that like data wise, and I said from what I've looked at side by side, I think it's comparable for the 30 days. Obviously, you can go way back further. So,
yeah, from a testing perspective. So I think this came up in one of the questions. I think it was Monsieur Blanc asked, because he's a TOS user, and I think we all agreed that there was like 526. So May 26th, we had a cross of the white CT into the red ribbon.
okay. Right. Yeah, that's what I got up, and I think so. The end of the day, 525 is when we actually crossed above the ribbon in TOS. Now, this may not be real time because obviously this is already filled in, so I don't know exactly what it looked like the closing of that day, but I would think it was probably pretty close to being above.
It had crossed the red, yes. And it also looks like in yours, you also had a ribbon inversion that day too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the full ribbon inversion looks to be over here on the 26th. Okay. Somewhere around there, right? So this was the 25th. Right? Yeah. Okay. So the next question is, I read through all that stuff, but did we do any testing on this yet that you posted that I missed across here below the ribbons or anything like that? Or can we test that is the question.
You mean just the white?
Yeah.
White behavior.
Yeah.
Funny that you asked that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We have tested it. I haven't written it up yet, but there's a couple things that are probably worth telling everybody about. I think the first one is that is an incredibly short-term signal. So let me show everyone what I'm talking about. I'm going to share my screen. You can keep your screen going. I'm just going to share mine, though, right now. And I think what you're asking, I need to ponder a little bit more. So what you see in front of you is what I call a CT breakout. So the cumulative tick breaking out. And if you go back to Michael's display, you actually see the
CT station. Or are you showing your CT ribbon cross slide?
Oh, wait a second. It's not shown.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be. Hang on a second. Let me make sure I'm. This is interesting. So let's see. Change windows, screens. Go there. Go live. Right. So that should not have kicked anybody out. Okay. Yeah. Now I see. I was sharing the wrong app. I'm sorry. So here's the challenge with doing that white stuff. So one of the limitations of EdgeRaider, and I'm not bashing EdgeRaider, it's really opened up our capabilities here with gamma testing as well as now the CT testing. But it's an end-of-day system. And what that means is that if you try to measure things that happen faster or on the same time frame, again, time frame matters, then you could run into some issues. And let me show you what some of those issues are. So just like I showed you guys before, that white line starting to take off from the other white lines, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So that's a long signal. The majority of these things last those white lines only last 3 days. I mean, look at the number of occurrences here, right? I mean, we're not talking like 1 or 2 trades. We're talking a huge amount of trades here, right? Over, nearly 300 just in these two alone, over a very long time. And the bearish, you can see well over 300, right? 200 plus here, 100 plus here, and the majority of these last, those 2 days. So why is this important to us? So we get into the situation with EdgeRater where you're getting into the signal. Let me go get TradeStation here. Let me just call this thing up so you can see it. So Michael, you're asking. Let me just go over to the RCX. You're asking about, have we tested this? Yes, but we're testing the state at the end of the day. Right? So when you get, here the state looks like it was going to be met. The CT was above these. So you would say enter here, but we know we have an exit actually condition in here in the middle. But at the end of the day, we have another entry condition, which is fine because you would exit and you would take the signal to get back in. But you can start to see in your mind's eye, well, maybe this isn't as fast. Maybe EdgeRater isn't as fast, or the evaluation of end of day isn't fast because, this is minute data here. We know to do whatever we're going to do, at these key points, whereas EdgeRater might have missed some of the profit taking from, whatever, however we define these signals. But once this thing starts rolling, it rolls pretty well, and you can get, here's another buy signal, or, stay in the trade signal. Oops, sorry, jumping all over here. Here's another one, and this is what JB and I and others here call railroad tracks, right? So this is when the white is just like strong as everything. So day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and then we kind of pull across here into the end of May, and you can see it's going to collapse here and come down and start touching one of these signals right here. So this was June, whatever that was, June 1st.
Yeah.
And then it fails there, right? So this would be where JB would take his profits that he had gotten in way back to the left. That's off screen. And then you would be out of the trade, and you'd be thinking about getting back in the trade right around in this area, if not this area, right? And then again, EdgeRater would have you getting in here, not down here, and you can see there's a heck of a slope difference in the SPX. So my point to everyone here, I have tested this. I tested it at length today. And the challenge that we end up with is that they're in the time frame that we're trying to measure. Okay, this is with ribbon. Hang on a second. In the time frame that we're trying to measure, we're just not moving fast enough. Yeah, here we go. So 3 days. You can actually see there's not a lot of edge in the win losses and across those days. So it's almost a wash using end of day data. So where does that leave us? It doesn't mean we're off the page. One of the things I haven't written up here is when we take that same CT breakout signal, so that's the white line that I was just shown, and then we couple it with the state of the ribbon, we actually do get some pretty serious improvement now taking it across the duration of the trend itself. So when we get in the trade, there isn't really a discernible thing for up to 3 days, but then if the trade holds, we take off like a banshee, right? So getting into these trades, what this tells me is that getting into these trades when we're in an uptrend, or getting into the trade to the downside when we're in a downward move, it would be down below here, by the way, not up here. has implications that we need to pay attention to. So I think the CT can keep us on the right side of the trade, but you can see there's not a lot of huge upside the shorter the signal gets. Is that helpful, Mike?
Sorry, yeah, I had to click over. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was wondering, because obviously, so that condition we met on the first, I exited partial of my trade, but we're still above the state that you're talking about of the ribbons. So I'm staying in part of my trade, which I'm still in at the moment because we haven't crossed back below the ribbons. So that's what I'm wondering about. What you showed there was you're in 3 days, then you get the acceleration from 3 to 10, which makes sense. The uptrend gains momentum, and that would be the swing trade portion of it, where you're above the ribbons. And then if you get a failure where it starts moving back into the ribbons or below the ribbons is where my exit would be. But on that first, that's where I would be taking a portion of my trade off, which I did for my longs. So, but I was just wondering what the stats were on that. Yeah, but I'm still in part because the other state, the longer term state. So this is what I'm trying to separate, I guess, is the shorter term state and the longer term state, right? So the shorter term state obviously is the white for intraday trading that can lead into holding multiple days, like we got on the 25th. We actually held above. The white actually held above most of the day there, yeah. So if you were in a short-term trade and you closed strong, then you can still stay in that trade. And then the next day was a continuation. Then your next state on your long-term state on the 27th is you're above the ribbons. So I'm wondering if that changes. At least it changed my trading plan, but I'm wondering how we can quantify that. Do you understand what I guess I'm asking or saying?
I know exactly what you're asking. So the previous stuff that I showed you guys was when we cross a moving average, either one or the other. And your takeaway from my previous discussion was that we would not take this signal to maximize the return because the overall ribbon is not conducive to going long yet. Okay. But there's nothing wrong with you taking this trade. It just doesn't have as good a statistics as if you were to flip the ribbon and take that trade. Is that part clear? What I just said?
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Okay. Now, so there's a couple entries here. The first entry is right here. When this entry sets up, you would do your initial trial balloon. We're downward sloping. We have no idea if this thing's going to fail. But this signal right here, back on the 24th, or whenever that is, I'm not going left here, is the initial entry. So I would try to find an option that I felt, all my data I've been using the SPY and the SPX. So I would try to find something that, was correlated with those, and potentially I could go long. I could sell some spreads, or I could actually do some debit spreads, call debit spreads to the upside, and get some participation to the upside. Now,
hey, Paul, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Right there is where I want to have my name list that I know positive gamma stocks at the P-Trans with the big move up to plus GEX. Like, I want that name list ready for those events.
I would completely agree with you, because this is setting up now when we start taking on. I mean, you have no knowledge of this stuff here, but what you do have knowledge is you've got the railroad tracks starting to develop and stocks that are correlated with the SPY, or that have had great relative strength when the SPY didn't, are now going to start moving. I can almost guarantee it. So we have to find those, and what JB is describing is a favorite test that we have, and that's when we're trying to identify stocks that are showing the characteristic of calls being added out and up, and that is that move from P-Trans towards plus GEX or plus GEX towards COI. And both of those are very, very powerful setups. And then when we couple it with this, like JB was just saying, and JB, if I mischaracterize something, please don't hesitate to correct me. At this point, because you're going to be going long here, right? You're going to want to go long. Again, you went long back here. You're going to go long again. And now as you come through, another signal you could do is when you clear the historical moving averages. Again, this was another test that I haven't showed you the data for, but this condition where you've got the white above the white moving averages, this railroad effect, and now we're starting to clear the ribbon. This would trigger another test right here, or another signal, and you would add to your positions, or you would get in with new positions in something else, as things mature. And then you're going to continue to ride this bus up until, in my parlance, I would ride it up literally until we get a crossing. And JB, I'm going to speak for you. If I get it wrong, correct me. This would be protect some of your profits. Now, we're not in a long-term uptrend, but we're improving, certainly. We've got positive slopes on everything on the moving averages. You can see that. We're anticipating that we are going to get a ribbon inversion, right? That's what we talked about earlier, and that's one of the most powerful long-term bulls or long-term shorts that we could use as a fundamental foundation here. And now we're going to start playing, maybe entering other positions as we get strength or not, right? So I think, Michael, that's what you're talking about. You leave your core positions on, you take a little bit of profits and pat yourself on the back, because now we're starting to see some weakness. We have no idea if this is going to come back down through. So you at least want to take some profits off the table. And then when you get this confirmation again, actually when the shortest white moving average crosses the other ones, and you get this potential setup of the railroad tracks, especially with linear up here, you would want to be getting in on this and riding this bull up, right? So again, this is this is the challenge with a short-term signal. Again, time frame matters. This is an incredibly fast signal. You've got to be in front of your computer. You can't be working a day job and expect to use this signal. I work a day job. I can't use this signal. Because if you miss this, you could actually wipe out several days of gains on a short-term signal. You don't want to do that. So you want to play the signals that are commensurate with your ability to put your butt in this chair and watch and have some screen time. And in doing so, I think you'll do yourself a favor. So there's 3 periodicities here, and then I'm going to shut up for a minute. 3 periodicities. One of them is this short-term here, moving into here. That's kind of that's the shortest term. And then when you cross into the moving averages, those typically do work for multiple days. Could take a scalp into a swing. And then with the inversion of the ribbons, now we can get into that longer term, more substantial, which direction do I want to go and how heavy do I want to go in that direction? All right, I'm going to shut up right now. Hopefully that was useful.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. A lot of people were asking about the comparative from TradeStation to TOS, which looks pretty similar from what I can tell, taking the same trades. The other thing I think to point out is when the tick, from my own experience, obviously Thursday was a very powerful tick day. I mean, that was linear up and a great scalp and bull day. But when the tick makes a new high right from the open, it was like 10:30, you could just draw a line across there. And when the tick makes a new high and then continues up, for me, from what I've seen, so background, I just used to use cumulative tick on stock charts, and it was like 5 minutes delayed, 3 to 5 minutes delayed back 10 years ago. And then I got TOS, and they had cumulative tick, but they didn't really have tick USC or tick ARC. So this has really changed for me on my tick side. But I've noticed whenever that tick makes a new high, and then continues up above that, it's almost like price. It's kind of like the same thing. It makes a new high, but then it just really, you get that momentum and powerful move when you're moving above those moving averages, at least intraday for me. That's just what I've noticed. I mean, JB can probably expand on that too, but because him and I go back and forth and talk about that all the time. But so the other question is, I think KTB is overlaying. I wanted to overlay the actual price. You have price in a different box up top, but I wanted to overlay price on the tick, which looks like KTB has already done that with the toss. Then that's another important aspect of it. Yeah, you've got it there.